23 straight seasons, the Duke Blue Devils open up a basketball season with a win. A dominant performance for Duke last night. They downed Dartmouth. Let's talk about it on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with JJ Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So great to have you here with us on Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. Excited to talk about Duke basketball with a win last night over Dartmouth to open up their season. 23 straight years of Duke men's basketball begin with a win, and we saw that last night from inside Cameron Indoor. Jon Scheyer starts off his second season as the Duke basketball head coach, and we're going to discuss all of that with our good pal Kevin Connelly, who is the site expert for Ball Durham. We'll do that throughout today's show. If you have not done so already, Locked On Blue Devils is a daily podcast, which means you could subscribe and see this in your feed each and every day. As soon as the show is uploaded, you're able to listen to us, leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Also, watch the show daily on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up. Really do appreciate when you guys take time to comment below throughout the course of the show, your thoughts on the Duke basketball team, and really appreciate how interactive this thing has become. Any questions that you have, send them to us via email at lockedonbluedevils@gmail.com, and we'll be able to answer those in future Mailbag Monday episodes here on the program. But without further ado, talking about a season opening win, let me bring on my good friend. He is Kevin Connelly, once again, the site expert for Ball Durham. And I don't know, Kevin, it just is such a beautiful feeling now that basketball is in our lives. We actually have stats that count that we could talk about. And man, that was a lot of fun to watch last night.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, finally, basketball is back. Like you said, the stats count, the record counts. And hey, we're off and running now. One game in the books. Who knows? Maybe, hopefully, 39 more to go, I think, if I have my math right.
So many things to sort of talk about, right, with the Duke team from last night's game. I want to talk about some individual performances that really stood out, how deep this team went, one noteworthy absence with this Duke team from an injury perspective, and then a player also not getting into the competition. So much to talk about in regards to last night's game, but we've talked all offseason about the fact that Duke has 4 returning starters from a year ago. It's the most combined returning starts since that 2000-2001 season when Duke went on to win the national championship game. And we'll start with those guys from last night. Worth noting, Mark Mitchell, a sprained ankle. Didn't really know a whole lot about that. That was a big surprise for folks, so he was left out of the action. But what did you make of the guys that returned?
Well, I thought it was very good. Obviously, you start with the man who wasn't there in Mark Mitchell. I think, again, you don't need him for a game against Dartmouth. I think it's not funny, but ironic that he was the only guy to play every single game for Duke last season until that round of 32 game in the NCAA tournament against Tennessee. And now going back to that game, he's missed his last 2 games for Duke. So again, you don't want to read much into it. Seemed like it's a very minor ankle sprain. Didn't have a walking boot, didn't have crutches. He should be good to go in short order. But other than that, you got to start with Kyle Filipowski, right? 2-hip flip, new hip flip, whatever anyone's calling him. Finishes with 25. He's 10 of 12 from the field. Didn't get a double-double, fell 3 rebounds shy of that. But again, going from his exhibition, how he's looked in exhibitions to now how he's looked in game 1 of the regular season, you have to be thrilled. Jeremy Roach, 14 points, looked comfortable, didn't make any 3-pointers, but again, that's fine in a game against Dartmouth. He looked comfortable getting to the basket, getting to the rim. And then I think Tyrese Proctor, again, just fell short of a double-double, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. Again, we thought his scoring numbers were going to go up this year, but I think it's vitally important that his assist numbers go up. And that's what he really showed last night against Dartmouth. Those 8 assists. And remember, a lot of guards got in foul trouble. I think Roach, Proctor, and Jared McCain all picked up 2 fouls in the first half. So We'll get into some negatives, but the way this team defended is going to be a little bit of a negative for me when we get into that a little bit later on.
Yeah, far and away, Kyle Filipowski is the story of this game for Duke basketball. Many people believe him to be one of the top players in the entire sport. We've talked about all of the preseason All-American honors that he's got, preseason ACC Player of the Year. I mean, just big-time expectations for Flip in 27 minutes of action, 10 of 12 from the floor, 1 of 2 from three-point range, 25 points, 7 rebounds. So, of course, last season, he began the year with 4 consecutive double-doubles to open up the season. This year, he starts it off with just your everyday 25-point performance on an efficient 7 of 12 shooting from the floor. Duke is going to need Kyle Filipowski to be their best player throughout this entire season. I truly believe that. I think he is that dynamic of a playmaker at 7 feet. His ability to score in the post is something that we don't talk about as much. I feel like we oftentimes spend our time talking about that outside shot and what it looks like as a 7-footer. But boy, he's efficient there around the rim. Some of the finishes that he even had with the left hand, he was off balanced, and watching it, it's almost like that doesn't really look like the wisest shot for one to take in that moment. But Flip gets it to go. His touch is just so impeccable right there around the rim.
Well, yeah, and we talked about this throughout the offseason is you saw how good he was last year, not close to 100%. I mean, this is a guy who had double hip surgery a couple of days after the season ended. You're going to see moves from him now this year. And again, granted, it's only game 1 that you didn't see last year. You're going to see more of his skill as a player on display this season. And I think that's one of the biggest things and the biggest reasons that this Duke team is going to have a success. You're still going to have that player who's strong down low, who can maneuver around the basket. But now you're going to see somebody who's way more agile and athletic on the perimeter and who can maybe handle the ball from the three-point line and get down into the paint with 2 dribbles and a crossover. And last night was a great first stepping stone for him in his sophomore season.
Excited to see what Flip can do throughout the remainder of the season, considering how he started off the year with that big-time performance. I think he had 3 dunks in last night's game of the 9 field goal attempts from 2-point range that he made. 3 of them were dunks. I want to watch that throughout the year. We saw the big one that he had on the drive and countdown to craziness, Kevin. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him getting up a little bit more above the rim this season after the offseason procedure.
Yeah, right. And that countdown to craziness dunk, that kind of introduced us to all, like, all right, this guy's healthy. This guy's different this year. This guy's way more athletic. And it has only carried over to the exhibition against UNC Pembroke, and now obviously here against Dartmouth as well.
All right, let's keep talking about some of those fine performances from Duke last night. 92-54, the final score for the Blue Devils. They defeat Dartmouth to go to 1-0 on the season, and we'll continue our conversation after our first time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You could see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 apps. Game Time is obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets, as they've got deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find the last-minute seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Here we go. We move forward on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils alongside my pal Kevin Connelly, who's the site expert for Ball Durham. My name is JJ Jackson. So you mentioned Tyrese Proctor's performance in the game last night. 8 points, 8 assists, 3 of 6 shooting from the floor, 2 of 4 from three-point range. I'm like you. You look at the numbers, just 25 minutes out on the floor for Tyrese, who averaged over 30 a season ago. No need for him to play a whole lot. But in some ways, only 6 shot attempts for Tyrese Proctor. Did an incredible job setting his teammates up. That's why he walks away with that 8-assist performance. Just all in all, this guy will continue to remind the world why he's going to be one of the top point guards in the entire country this season. Forget the ACC. This guy will be one of the top lead guards in the entire country.
Well, that's right. Exactly what you want your point guard to do. Am I right? I mean, he has to pick his spots. You're going to have to figure out a way for him, or he's going to have to figure out a way for himself. All right, when do I have to control things and score? When can I kind of sit back and facilitate and get my teammates open and let them score? And I think he almost had the perfect mix last night against Dartmouth. Like you said, only played 25 minutes, picked up 2 fouls in the first half, didn't pick up any the rest of the game. But again, in a 40-point blowout, there's no need for Jon Scheyer to trot everybody out there and play them 30 to 35 minutes in a game where you're winning by 40. I mean, you look at the starting lineup, Jeremy Roach played the most minutes at 31, and you're comfortable with him playing those minutes because he's your senior captain, am I right? So yeah, I think Tyrese Proctor, if I had to grade his performance last night, I'd give it an A-.
But you look at the Duke team here with scoring numbers for the Blue Devils, 4 players in double figures. That was Kyle Filipowski leading the way with 25. Jeremy Roach had 14. Caleb Foster, 15. Jalen Blakes had 10. And then Tyrese Proctor and Jared McCain had 8 points. Sean Stewart was 6. And then 3 other Blue Devils with 2 points each. Let's talk about some of those bench performances that we saw. Caleb Foster, Jalen Blakes, both in double figures. Jalen Blakes, 3 for 3 from the floor, an and one finish, a 3-point jumper that he made in the corner. Very aggressive on the defensive end. 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 block shots, 3 steals. I mean, man, Jalen Blake's a player that we're not talking about as much, but a returning player with loads of experience, expecting big things out of him this season as well, I think.
Yeah, and again, a player that flew under the radar, and you think about things, and it's like, all right, if Jalen Blakes wasn't on Duke, I mean, how many other power conference teams would he be starting on this season? And for Duke, what is he? Their 4th guard, their 5th guard, maybe on their
kind of an afterthought, yeah.
Yeah, and he comes out, puts up 10. I mean, this is a player that you don't talk about last year. There was about a 2-week stretch where he was Duke's best player last year. People forget that. I mean, when this team was going through injuries and illnesses right around the beginning of ACC play in mid to late December, he was Duke's leading scorer and best player. And that ability just didn't go anywhere. I mean, other players got better and got healthy and were on the court more often. But, yeah, Jalen Blakes, I think I said it earlier this offseason with you. I mean, has to remind you of like a little bit more offensively skilled Jordan Goldwire. I mean, undersized guard, defensive-minded first. He's tough. He'll make those tough finishes around the basket, and he can step outside every once in a while and hit a three-pointer. So I think Jalen Blakes, he's going to be – there's a role for him on this team, no doubt about it. Obviously, it'll be in a reserved role, but it just seems like with his experience and his tenacity every time he's on the floor, gives it 110% every single second he steps on the court. It just feels like there's some type of role for him on this team on the court.
Just excited to see him continue to improve throughout this season. We'll see, obviously, again, there are outliers you could throw out there. There's certainly overreactions like we talked about following Countdown to Craziness and these exhibitions. These numbers are not going to translate for everybody throughout the season. I do think you're going to see that from Kyle Filipowski with this 25-point performance. We'll see more of that this year, but we'll see what else we can get from a player like Jalen Blakes, who's going to be a role guy for this Duke team. Let's talk about this, though. What about Caleb Foster? 15 points in his college debut. Checks in early, one of the first guys off the bench at that first media timeout. He and Christian Reeves come in. Reeves gives Ryan Young a breather. You insert Caleb Foster there into the backcourt and immediately gets to scoring right away, makes a 3-point jumper, and again, finishes with 15 points.
Yeah, it feels like Caleb Foster is going to be this team's 6th man, right? Without Mark Mitchell, obviously the front court substitutions were thrown off a little bit with Ryan Young having to start and Christian Reeves being the first big man off the bench. But it feels like Caleb Foster is going to be the first guy off the bench pretty consistently throughout this season. And he kind of picked up where we last saw him in a lot of these scrimmage videos and practice videos where he was kind of just scoring at will. And he does it here against Dartmouth. 6 of 10 from the floor, 1 of 3 from downtown. He played a boatload of minutes too. I think he had the second most minutes on the team behind Jeremy Roach at 29. So getting more experience out there against these Division I foes. And there's nothing really to say bad about his game. Really, ever since he stepped foot on campus, it feels like he's just had glowing reviews. And it continues here in game one. Now, obviously, I think we'll get into Friday night, but Friday night's going to be a little bit more of a challenge for Jon Scheyer and how he wants to divvy up his minutes throughout those 40 against Arizona.
Arizona Wildcats are looming, but I'm excited for what we saw from Caleb Foster last night. I think we're going to see many big-time performances from him throughout the course of the season. As you said, the hype around him has increased as we go throughout the portion of the lead up to the start of the season. I'm the guy out there that was totaling up his points in the scrimmage videos that we were seeing online. And just really excited to see what Foster could do throughout the course of the season. Let's take our last break here on the program, and then we'll start to wind things down here on this episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and you can score early this NFL season. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Talking about the NFL and FanDuel, how about our in-state Carolina Panthers getting a chance to play some Thursday night football this week? Tough day for Bryce Young and the Panthers this past weekend, but on Thursday, they're taking on the Chicago Bears, and you could see a lot of big things there, from spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. All you need to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. So go ahead, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off this NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. Closing out today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside my pal Kevin Connelly, the site expert for Ball Durham. All right, you talk about content this time of year. You've got a lot of it coming over at Ball Durham. Tell us a little bit about your work, Kevin.
Well, we got everything you could possibly want on Duke basketball, recruiting news, games are back in action, opinions, news and recaps. We got it all. So give us a follow on X or Twitter at ball_Durham, and then read us every day over at www.balldurham.com.
Check it out. It's really good stuff over there. So, all right, let's take another look at last night's box score for this Duke team. Other freshmen that were able to contribute to the action, not a freshman, but Christian Reeves did play those 12 minutes coming off the bench, had 3 rebounds and 2 points. Sean Stewart had 9 minutes on the floor, scoring 6 points and 5 rebounds. TJ Power was out there for 8 minutes. He had no points, was 0 of 1 from the three-point line shooting there. But then notably off the bench, Jaden Schutt did not get into the basketball game last night for Duke. A couple of walk-ons got in, and Spencer Hubbard, who scored. Neil Begovic, who had been a scholarship player at Stanford the last few seasons, comes over as a preferred walk-on for this Duke team. He was out there on the floor, but we did not see number 14, Jaden Schutt, out there at all. And Jon Scheyer had some interesting comments following the game. I don't know what to think of this, because, again, I'm the leader of the Jaden Schutt fan club, Kevin, and really want that guy to perform well this season for Duke, and he doesn't play in last night's game.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like outside of the Mark Mitchell injury, this might have been the biggest story to come out of this game, because you're expecting Jaden Schutt as a sophomore to take another step up in his development and try and push to get some type of role on this team. And then he's dressed and doesn't play against Dartmouth. So obviously the question had to be asked of Jon Scheyer after the game, why didn't Jaden Schutt play? And it was a strange response, at least on the surface. He was saying that he's fine. It wasn't an injury or an illness. He said he had a long journey ahead of him, and he was going to keep the details private. But everything was fine between Jaden and Scheyer, and it just felt weird. And then I think there was a report last night in the News of Observer saying that the plan for Duke was to redshirt him this season. And then just in my mind, it doesn't make sense. All right, Duke is obviously loaded at guard this year, right? So, okay, if he wants the red shirt, and Giant Sire said that they're going to do the best for him going forward and all that stuff, and you wonder, okay, he burned 1 year of eligibility last year, so he'd have 3 more upcoming. So if he red shirts this year, he'd still have 3 years of eligibility going forward. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, Duke's going to be loaded at guard again next year, right? I mean, you already have the number 1 recruiting class coming in. You are likely going to add to it, still in the race for VJ Edgecombe and Dylan Harper. Now, I know there's some rumors of potential decommitments from Connelly. I think I always pronounce his last name wrong. I'll get it right if he ends up at Duke. And then also you have the outstanding question of what are Caleb Foster and Jared McCain going to do? So I feel like there's still more behind this story. I don't know if Jaden Schutt and Duke are coming to the realization that there might not be a spot for him to play in this program. I think there was a quote from him from 247 Sports before the season that he said, like, he's not running, he's not hiding from everything. He's here to help win a national championship, saying all the national championship and saying all the right things. But just to me, just deep down inside, it feels like there's a lot more behind this story that at least is letting on into the public eye.
Yeah, we'll continue to follow it, of course. But planning to redshirt as a sophomore after appearing in games as a freshman, just a little confusing. The loaded backcourt is what's so surprising. And I really do think this is a guy offensively who can make an impact on this Duke team. The question has always been, all right, what can you bring on the defensive end of the floor? So something that we will certainly monitor. Big test coming up for Duke against Arizona on Friday, and then they've got a game against against Michigan State on Tuesday.
Maybe they want to play James Madison.
Maybe they do, because last night James Madison in East Lansing went into Michigan State and knocked off the Spartans, the number 4 team in the country. Tom Izzo lost a game in November for the first time in his career. Izzo had been 73-0 in home games in November. A crazy defeat there for the Spartans. Big games coming up nonetheless for Duke. Friday against Arizona, Tuesday against Michigan State, Kevin.
Yeah, so first let's talk quickly about Arizona. First big test for this team. Feels like Duke's going to need Mark Mitchell back just to be that versatile wing, to lock things down defensively, to maybe not see as many minutes from a Ryan Young or a Christian Reeves than we saw last night. So I think that's going to be huge for Duke. Then you go to Michigan State. Now, yes, obviously, it's not good for Michigan State that they lost at home to James Madison. I think they were 1 of 20 from 3-point range. You're not going to win many basketball games playing like that, no matter who you're playing. So I'm not sure if Michigan State has a game between now and next week, but obviously they're going to need some type of statement game to bounce back, to prove that this James Madison loss was just a fluke. Because remember, many people thought this was a top 5 team. They are a top 5 team in the preseason. Many people were projecting Michigan State to go to the Final Four. People were saying this could be Tom Izzo's best team as the head coach of Michigan State. So they're going to want to bounce back in a big way and make a statement against Duke, needing a victory to prove to the rest of the country that they're still for real, and they just had a blip on the radar on opening night and a bad shooting night, and anyone can be beat at any time. So 2 huge games for Duke upcoming, both for very different reasons, and both opponents going to give them a challenge for very, very different reasons as well.
Well, let's see what Duke's able to do on Friday against the Wildcats, and then again on Tuesday against those Michigan State Spartans. We'll go ahead and we will we'll end the show here. We'll be able to recap all the games throughout the rest of the week and get you set for that big one between Duke and Arizona. So, Kevin, as always, it is great to see you, my friend. Looking forward to talking to you again soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Kevin Connelly, the site expert, joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. That's going to do it for our show here today. Thank you for your support as always. Duke is victorious. Once again, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.